reconvene and deal with, we have no new business. We're moving on to 14 and 14.1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a rezoning application to consider an amendment to the RSD1 residential medium lot zone from that to RDH residential duplex zone. You see the location map here as shown in your report. The proposal is to create a duplex, as shown on the site plan to the left side of the drawing. I have used the excerpt from the Front Street elevation drawing and sort of give you an idea of the shape of the architecture with the side profile there to indicate what the proposal is going to appear like on that particular property. So the recommendation that is before you is zoning bylaw amendment 19233 Lakeshore Drive, bylaw 2018-21, reintroduced and read a first and second time, and then a public hearing be held on September 24th, 2018 to receive public feedback on zoning bylaw amendment 19233 Lakeshore Drive, bylaw number 2018-21.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Councilor Barr.
On the east elevation diagram that you have up there, there's a dotted line to the top. So that would, am I correct to assume that that's the maximum permitted height and they're not asking for any height variation just on their further plan?
I believe that is correct, yes.
Okay. I know we gave a variance for the neighbor property and a similar style.
Any other questions? Councilor Peak?
I'll bring it forward as
Thank
stated.
you. Seconder, please. Councilor Traynor.
Oh, sorry, I'm just looking at the date. Good. That's fine.
Okay.
I'm seconding.
Yep. Any further discussion? Okay.
I
Go
just
ahead.
have one question, if I might, and this concerns the plan, the east elevation. Well, I guess the one on the left as well. What's the little, is it like a service shed, or what's the little piece on the side of either side of the duplex, please? So you see where the cars are, or maybe
Yes,
I'm just reading?
that's the garage.
That's the garage.
So you actually go through the front door, I think that's, you'll see, and then there's the side setback to the property line. So the front door, there's a garage door, or a man door, if we call it that, right? You have a garage door and you have a man door that goes into the house, which is very close to the front door. Is that where you're speaking of? Yes, let me turn on the pointer here. This area?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the front entry hall. So there's a single-car garage here, and this is the front door, and you go in the front entry hall, and there are stairs to the upper floor, and this is the main floor. So it's all contained within the building. The exterior wall of the building is here.
That's what you're saying.
And then you have the setback to the side property line.
Okay, so I understand that. If you look at the east elevation,
Here.
yeah, what's that you have your
I
little?
think you'll find that's just detailing to provide visual interest on.
Oh,
on
it's not an
profile.
actual extension?
I don't believe so, no.
Oh, okay.
No,
'Cause
not
I
certainly
couldn't
from
see
the
that on the
plans
plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that's just to add visual interest.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anybody else? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank
And
you.
just for clarification, that was one and two, both resolutions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, on to 14.2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this application is to consider a change to Section 11.7, CM Heavy Commercial Zone, to allow for recreation service indoor as a site-specific use on the property located at 9304 Jubilee Road East. So you can see the location map shown here. There's an existing building on that site, and it's fairly fairly straightforward. Use is internal to the building, site-specific change.
Any questions, planner? Okay. Someone can bring it forward, please. Oh, sorry, Councillor Trainer.
I will bring resolutions 1 and 2 forward as written.
Okay, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Peak. Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 14.3. Ms. Gain.
All right, this is an application to consider amendment of section 12.1.2, principal uses in the M1 light industrial zone to allow contractor service general as a site-specific use at 15823 Logie Road.
Questions? Would you bring it forward,
I
Councillor?
will bring it forward.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Holmes, thank you. Anything further? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 14.4. Ms. Gain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is an application to consider amendment of section 11.5.2, principal uses in the central business zone to allow craft brewery or distillery as a site-specific use for the property located at 13220 Victoria Road North. I've included here the definition of craft brewery distillery for your ease of reference. The property is located on Victoria Road North. A portion of the existing business will be used for the use as defined.
Councillor Peak.
Yes, I do have a question under the craft brewery distillery. It says means of building used for production of alcoholic beverages with a maximum gross floor area of 1,000 square meters. Is that maximum floor area for production or for the total?
I believe it is for production. It speaks specifically to production, so I would suggest that, yes, it is that specific use.
Thank you very kindly.
You're welcome.
Although it does state that the lounge component is 25% of the total.
Minimum.
Minimum, yeah, minimum. Anyway, it sounds like it's inclusive. Councillor Peak.
I will bring it forward.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Boot, thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Carlson.
I have just a question.
Yep.
In regards to the actual production area versus the seating area. On the image that we have, I don't see the production area. Can someone just clarify that for me? Where would they actually be brewing / distilling?
I'm sorry, I did not include that diagram, but Schedule B of the proposed floor plan, you'll see the long, narrow section leading to what I believe would be the rear door
Yeah.
of the establishment. That is the area that would be used for production. It's a fairly small space.
Where
that-
there says deep fryer, grill, furnace, that area?
Yes, yes, they will be converting that area.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
You're welcome.
Okay. All in favor?
I just have one question, sorry. It shows two different addresses, 13220 and 13224. Are those, is that like a front and back address or side-by-side address?
Quite frankly, I'm not aware of what the history is there, but that is how the information was laid out. I think it is likely that two spaces were joined together, and so rather than choose one, it's referencing both.
They will all be on North Victoria.
I can see that. I was just wondering,
So I'm not sure, I'm not aware, but just to be clear, when it's civic addresses like that 13220, 13224, the municipality establishes civic addresses, so it could have been historically, there was two businesses in there, so they just assigned them two addresses. It's not, it's one legal address, so the civic addresses are a little bit arbitrary.
Okay.
And we would probably ultimately, as the business is going, choose one address. It would be more of a concern if the legal address was two separate legal addresses.
Okay.
These are just civic addresses.
So the business where Rock Fortan is in, that might be 13226 or 8 or something?
It would be a different civic
It would be a
address,
different, yeah. That's weird. Thank you.
Excuse me, may I clarify?
Oh.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
The business where Rock Fortan's Maple Shop is 13224.
Ah, okay.
It was all bought as one parcel. 220 is where the application for the brew pub is.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
It's just on file as one address.
And
Okay.
Another, just a point of clarification for the next go, is the distilling portion was taken out during the advisory council meeting. So there is no distilling going on, there is just brewing, which is a very different process altogether. Distilling carries a higher temperature and a higher risk factor, and there won't be any distilling equipment there. So it's a little bit misleading having distilling in the application.
Thank
So
you.
we should clarify, though, is it one legal lot with two businesses, or is that separate? Is 13224 a separate? Because that will make a difference.
I will certainly look into this. I took it from the report that went to the Advisory Planning Commission and didn't question it, but certainly I will sort that out and be sure that the bylaw reads appropriately.
Councillor Carlson?
Just in regards to that, I guess I could add, I don't think it would really matter if we were to allow permission for a larger area to be a brew pub distillery. I think that really, when it comes down to it, one space or two, if it's zoned for that, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to become that, but if it wants to become that, I don't see a problem.
No, I don't see a
So-
problem with it either. I was just a little
Yeah, I
confused
just
about the
want-
duplication.
just Instead of
Double.
taking this all the way back and going through it again, I think that would be worth talking about.
It just needs clarification.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that.
Councillor Barclay?
If you read the text in the amending bylaw, it speaks to the northerly 24 feet of lot 13. So wouldn't that be the space that's currently the Rock Fortan's space?
It's entirely possible. Often what happened in the past is that buildings were constructed across lot lines. It could well be that a single building crosses lot lines, and that's how it's ended up with two civic addresses, something of that nature, but I will certainly sort through that.
Okay. Good? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to 14.5, which you received as a extra sheet since it was omitted, should have been included. Okay, Connor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, as you know, we held the public hearing just prior in the agenda, and the applicant had requested that we proceed in a speedy fashion, considering the application that was before you. I have recommended, and I believe the report here shows this, that we consider third reading so that the applicant has the assurance of council's decision for preliminary approval, if you will, of the proposed bylaw change, and that we give you further information once we receive that detailed subdivision application. and you consider any amendments that you might want to make to the text of the bylaws, the covenants themselves, based on that more detailed information at the time of subdivision. So we would bring any proposed changes to the wording of the restrictive covenant forward at the time we considered final adoption of the zone amending bylaw.
So we can only do third reading tonight, which is...
We could do both, but this gives us the opportunity to have a fulsome review of the material and be sure. It is very likely there are going to be restrictive covenants required through the subdivision process, so it won't delay the process at all.
I thought the subdivision approval aspect was something that would be carried out separately.
It is entirely separate, but it is very likely through the subdivision process that the subdivision approving officer will be requiring covenants to be confirmed. Generally, the environmental protection areas, all those things are confirmed through covenants registered at the time of subdivision. So should we discover anything that needs to be added at that time, that can inform the amendment of these two covenants. So I imagine that there will be additional information that we'll want to review.
So basically, just to add to that, if council, I mean, I understand council's, or there's been some desire to ensure this is expedited, and so council could, your options are to consider third reading and just have us direct staff to review the legal process to amend the covenant, so to take the restriction off, and then for it to come back and not wait for the approving officer and the subdivision plan. That is certainly one way of doing it. It would still be our recommendation, though, for third reading, and to get the modified covenant in place before you consider adoption. The other one would be to, as the Director of Development Service has suggested, doing third reading and actually waiting for adoption to be concurrent with the new subdivision layout. And then the fourth is just to do adoption tonight and...
To do third reading, I mean, yeah.
Your third option would be to do, you could do adoption, but you do still have to ensure that the covenant is amended.
So that would just require an adjustment in the motion.
If you're comfortable without getting the legal documentation done of the covenant, there's still work to do. We haven't done that work on it, so that's why we're recommending third reading with coming back with the modified covenant. Usually we wouldn't do adoption before you actually see what the covenant's going to say.
Yeah, I understand. What sort of time frame are we looking at, please?
I have not yet received the renewal or the revised layout from the applicant, so I'm really not in a position to say.
That's if we were going to wait for the subdivision. That's if council wanted to wait to do the modifications
Right.
to the covenant until their layout. But if you were content moving forward with just making the changes without saying a new layout, so that you would have to rely on, we had the conversation that it could be up to 320, it could be 100. We don't have any idea, but if that's not a concern of council, then it would be next council meeting when we would bring back just the modified covenant to take out any reference to limited numbers.
Okay, I guess, just a minute, Councillor Barco. I guess my concern was initially it was expressed that, it was a clustered situation, and it was defined earlier as the footprint does not change, and that the protected areas are as they always have been. And so I don't know, other than adjustments for numbers of dwellings, et cetera, that would, encompass the changes in pipe sizes or whatever that would come at the subdivision approval stage, that, waiting on language on the covenant seems to me, we know full well that there's no change in the footprint, there's no change in the protected areas, so I'm a little confused as to what kind of our expectations are for a big change.
I think that's for council to discuss, on whether or not you're completely supportive of just a change without knowing what it might be. And that if you are, then I would still recommend third reading with the modification to the covenant, just because it's a legal document and you
Okay.
should see it. But if you're interested, if you want to say, we want to see what the layout is, that's when you would, and that's entirely, that's a philosophical policy decision for discussion for you to have on how interested in you are, if you want to relate what the new layout's going to be to taking the limitation of numbers off or not.
Yep.
One thing we should note, though, that's just, it is a little, it's a technicality, but it is important. The Development Services Director did ask the applicant to put an application in, so on July the 25th, asked via email to submit an application for an OCP amendment and the fee that goes along with it, because that's what it is. And we still haven't received that application from the applicant, and we did follow up and ask about it. So it's just, again, it's a little bit frustrating for staff in trying to expedite it, but that's what every other applicant needs to do, is have an application in.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the whole thing. Councillor Carlson?
Just to follow up on that, so without an application for an OCP amendment and the fee that goes with it, can we do this?
Again,
We don't have the document, like, if I don't.
We can do third
If
reading.
we're asking for an official community plan amendment, but we don't have the request for one,
My suggestion would be that you could do third reading, but you wouldn't consider adoption until you have that paperwork in place.
Thank you.
That shows that it was a request and an application, like, again.
I could shed some light on that if I could speak for 2 minutes,
I
please.
don't think that's,
Would be new information.
no, that'd be new information. Councillor Barkmore and Councillor Booth?
So if I understand the process correctly, we will be getting subdivision layout and be able to comment and talk about whatever concerns we have at that time. I don't see that doing anything other than what staff have recommended which is to sort of do that process along with the covenant concurrently and to do anything other would speed anything up for anybody. So I would like to just stick with the recommendation for a number of reasons there.
Just to be clear, though, I think there is a little, I think when the report talks about the layout, needing to have the layout done as well, and you might just, so council does have to recognize that there is a difference between that and just taking the restriction off of the covenant, which is what I'm potentially suggesting. So it's that question of if you're okay to remove the restriction before you get your preliminary layout, or if you want to make it clear to the applicant that you're not going to consider adoption until you see what the subdivision layout's going to be.
Councillor Booth?
Thank you. I just have a question with verbiage here I'm not quite understanding. When it says to modify the covenants, and then it says to remove the 67 lot limitation, the modification is the removal of the limitation, correct?
That is one possibility of a way to modify it, yes.
Okay, to me, if we're just, what else is in the covenant that, other than the 67 lot limitation? Is there anything else in the covenants?
There are a number of paragraphs there, of which I don't know. I think the crux of the issue for me is that council at the time of the rezoning chose to put a restrictive covenant on limiting the density.
Right.
And we would be consistent with that if you considered fully the amendment to the covenant, whether that is entirely just removing it or investigating to see if there in fact are other provisions that we need to look into. To expedite the process, I've said, okay, from a policy perspective, we can proceed with the OCP amendment. But I have not researched or delved into the specifics of any other provision in that restrictive covenant. Certainly, we'll do that through the subdivision process, but ultimately, we haven't had an opportunity to comment. We just said, okay, let's find out if you're interested in reviewing the policy. If you are, then we can look at the legal requirements for the covenant and see if there are any additional issues or not.
I think that if the recommendation that the Development Services Director was making, if the applicant was right now ready to go for subdivision and was trying to be the most expedient to get to the final point, then what the Development Director, Services Director has recommended would actually be the fastest process. Keep this at third reading and get all of the subdivision application in so that if there was any changes that needed to be done in the covenant, it would be done on that same covenant and it would be all done. But my understanding from this process so far is that's not actually, that the applicant's preference is more to get this done, to get these approvals done, to take the limitation off, take the limitation of numbers, let the 1/3 acre be the limitation, take that limitation off altogether, and then start dealing later, at a later time, maybe right away, maybe later, with the subdivision. So again, that's kind of what council needs to decide first of all, is whether or not to separate those two things completely, to say, we're okay taking the restriction off and let the zoning bylaw govern the maximum lots. And then make the necessary legal amendment to take that first piece of the covenant off. Let the things fall as they do once an application comes in later on for subdivision, rather than tying the two of them together, which is what we're talking about here. I think that's the first discussion to have, and then we can talk about how you make that happen.
Councillor Carlson and Councillor Peak.
Well, what about based on the information that the proponent did give us, which was sort of a, well, could happen, and maybe we'll do this many lots. Would it be possible to put a different number that council was comfortable with, whether it's 150 or 210, and then work towards that as the amended covenant? Or if we said, if right now the number is 300, right? If that's our maximum, if we assume that might be a little bit too much, is it something we could discuss at this point in time to change that number from 67 to 137 or whatever?
And that's entirely the question for council.
'Cause I would be-
Are you comfortable just letting the 1/3 acre limitation being the limitation and saying that it's never going to be more than that? Because that's what the zoning's going to limit it to, and it's going to be depending on how the drawing can be, or do you want to pick a number limiting it, and is that fair to just pick a number?
So to follow that then, based on the idea that we've been told the footprint will remain the same as the original plan, and that's been stated multiple times, is how do we ensure that once it's all built out, that is what happens? Because within the original footprint, I believe it does limit the number of lots to be less than what is currently zoned, if I'm not mistaken, right?
It would be up to it would be out of council's hand. It would be the approving officer using the basis of what approving, in public interest and all of those things. So one would presume that the approving officer had heard loud and clearly that you expect it to be within the same footprint.
Right.
But it doesn't guarantee it.
So is there a way to guarantee it? Is there do you put a covenant on the green space? I don't know if that is something, but if that would be any easier in this process or not.
And that's exactly why the recommendation has been how it's been, to say, let's see it. That's why she came up with her recommendation as she did, to say, keep it there until we see something.
Okay, I understand a bit more now. Councillor Peak.
Yeah, I would have trouble picking a number because that's arbitrary, whereas I understand the concept of the footprint remaining the same, and as the process moves forward, that the 1/3 acre plus the geography of that particular land would in fact be limiting on how many might actually be created. So I would be comfortable in moving forward without setting a number, knowing that the process in terms of all the services and the geography on the land would make that restriction in a physical way without me sort of arbitrarily choosing a number. But the fact that it's restricted to the footprint and that we still retain the reserve, that is the public space, green space, as a dedication is what I see of advantage to the continuing process. So that if I might, then I would bring it forward for third reading, and I'm not quite, but I would look to just allow the amendment to be self-containing in terms of the process. I'm not sure what the wording might be on the second part.
So just for clarity, to understand, do you mean remove that limitation, remove the work to get the covenant worded, to remove that limitation and let the process take care of how many it's actually going to be?
That's exactly what I would
Right.
suggest.
So still keep it at third reading and direct staff to modify the existing covenant to remove the restriction on the 67 lots.
And if I might, could I bring that forward
Yes,
as a
you may.
motion
Yes.
for discussion?
Yeah. Seconder, please. Councillor Booth, thank you.
No
Councillor
question?
Carlson.
I don't know if this can be answered without Chris here, but maybe it can be. There's a letter in opposition, and there's been other things vocalized over the history of Hunter's Hills in regards to water and runoff. And I recognize that there is steward that will control some of that, but is there assurance that with increased density, not just the 67, but increased density, that won't become a bigger issue than it potentially already is?
And that, I think that is exactly what you need to rely on your subdivision approving officer, and that the applicant has to be loud and clear, in which we tried to make it loud and clear in the last report that came forward to council, is that any subdivision application that comes forward now will be considered as a completely new application, and that there may be fundamental differences. That may be upsized services required, the lift station may not be able to service, the fire escape that the fire chief indicated at the beginning might be there may be fundamental changes, and that is that essence of that conversation needs to be captured, so that it's not suggested that council's intent ever in doing this, if you approve this change, was to just say, but you've approved all the rest of that stuff. It's a new application being considered new again.
So with the motion on the table, does that disregard all of the?
No, the motion on the table it doesn't, because approving officer isn't affected by council resolution, but it's more for the applicant and the public to understand.
But these concerns, if this were to go to third reading and the covenant was removed, would these concerns be addressed and we go through that subdivision process?
Absolutely,
Okay.
those would be addressed, and that's the intent all along, would be to say this is a new application from a subdivision perspective, and that nothing from history
Right.
is going to say that, well, you approved that in the last discussion.
Thank you.
Councillor Barco.
Yes, I'd like to refer to the letter from Mr. Budding that we received concerning the public hearing as well. And I have to say that I agree with his concerns. And at this point, until we see the plan and have the engineering work, they're only concerns. But I could have written this letter myself, and I think they're very serious concerns. And as council knows, I sent them all links to the Naramata Society for Responsible Infrastructure. We don't want to see a Summerland Society for Responsible Infrastructure formed here, and I hope that the developer takes these concerns very seriously.
Well, I think it was just explained that I think, that's the sort of thing that will be covered by the plan itself, and the dealing with the Development Services Director will see to that those things are covered.
With the approving officer,
The
and
approving
but
officer will cover
it can't be
them.
stated enough that is the intent, and it would be the lens of the approving officer to say that exactly that, and yeah.
All of those things, sewer, overland water, drainage problems, all those sorts of things would be dealt with at that time. Councillor Peak?
Yeah, I appreciate Councillor Barkwell's focus and emphasis on that particular item, because I think that is true.
Good. Councillor Trainer?
Can I just ask for clarification on the motion that Councillor Peak brought forward? Is it different from the one, or how does it differ from the one that's written?
I believe that number 1 would be as stated, and number 2 would be to propose the lifting of the restrictions. Am I correct in doing this on the amendment?
So the initial resolution was going to wait until there was subdivision paperwork submitted.
Okay.
So that it gave council still control on a little bit, like council doesn't have control once it goes to the approving officer. If you pass that resolution, council no longer has control.
Okay.
If you didn't adopt it until you were more understanding of what was being asked in the subdivision, council retains control. So that's the difference.
Okay. But everything that you just talked about
Yeah.
applies, so,
Yeah.
I get it. Thank you.
Councillor Holmes?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I prefer the motion that staff proposed for many of the reasons Councillor Barkwell stated earlier at the outset. I think I'd certainly like to see the plans. I think it's also should be in the applicant's interest for council to see the plans. I think it would lend it greater community support if they were brought to a public meeting. And I don't think less information coming to council or less council having less control in these sort of things is going to be to anybody's benefit. So, and I agree with the process set out, recommended by staff. So I wouldn't be supporting the motion on the table, but I would support the motion that's recommended by staff.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion on the table. Councillor Booth?
I have a question of something that Councillor Holmes just stated. He mentioned that there would be more public approval. Does that, there's not another public meeting, right? We had our
No.
public hearing.
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, we're in discussion mode here. Go ahead.
Please.
No, I just think it's more information as, council meetings are public meetings, and so more information that comes to public meetings, the better for everybody.
He wasn't talking about a public hearing, just
No,
talking
no,
about the
it's a-
process of the
Okay, but
council
you were
meeting.
just saying more buy-in from the public, and so that had me a little, I wasn't really sure what you were suggesting there.
You know, I just, I come from the angle of the less surprises, the better.
Mm.
And, and this would be a way for, you're not springing on anything on people down the road that they know exactly what's coming down the pipe.
I think the thing that council has to recognize is that this is under the assumption that this subdivision is going to move forward right away, and that it's the applicant's plan to move forward right away, and that we're going to finish this meeting and they're going to get working on subdivision layouts. I don't know, because I have not had this conversation with the applicant, but the question is that the intent, is council, if you were to consider not just removing it right now, if their intent is to potentially start looking at a preliminary layout in a year from now, this would sit at third reading then for the year or for the 2 years until, so that would be the problem if you were trying to say, let's take that off and then give the applicant time to rethink and rejig. He doesn't have certainty at the point if you do it that way. So that would be one thing to keep in mind if you chose to tie getting subdivision paperwork in before going to adoption is, again, if that's your intent, that's fine, but you have to recognize that that's what would happen, is it's not necessarily what the applicant intends to do.
Councillor Carlson?
Just to throw it out there then, what would happen if this went through a third time and then the restricted covenant
was lifted and then the entire site was sold to someone else. Would this all go along with it? Would they have to follow the same footprint and all the things that we've talked about?
Oh.
No, the covenant would have to stay in the covenant, what is there in covenant, it would have to stay on. But again, it wouldn't have to follow the same footprint, but the direction that the approving officer has been given from council is that the expectation is it's that layout.
Right.
But there is risk.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definite risk from that angle. So that's why I'm saying it's most important that council is comfortable with the zoning, the way that we've done this. The real question to council is, are you comfortable with the 1/3 acre lots restriction? And really saying, well, we're not going to change the outline and things. That those are just really just words. But if it's enough comfort to say it's never going to be more than a 1/3 acre lot, that's what the zoning is, that's when you should be comfortable lifting the restrictive covenant.
Councillor Barclay.
Could you remind us what the opportunity for public input will be on the rezoning phase of this application?
This is the rezoning.
Yeah,
It
so
would- There
there
would be
won't-
no more, theoretically, once it goes to subdivision, there would be no more public input unless the approving officer felt that, the approving officer can also call for public consultation. Approving officer can say, I'm not comfortable approving this, it appears to me that it's not in the best interest of the public, and I need input before I can make a decision. So if it was fundamentally different, if the approving officer was aware of this conversation and they received an application that was very different, they have means to ask for more input. But statutorily, there's no more.
Go ahead.
May I just say something? I think as time goes by, I'll try to define the process in a way that we all understand better. This is unfortunately not following the standard process, so of course it's a little bit more difficult to understand, but most municipalities tie the adoption of a zoning bylaw to approval of a subdivision plan in order to avoid speculative rezoning. And I think that's probably a topic that's been discussed at this table, whether it's this group or a previous group. I mean, it comes up quite frequently in planning in local government. So by leaving it entirely dependent upon the zoning, that will, of course, that has a threshold. And we know that this property has some limitations that will in of themselves provide some limitations. But if the development does not proceed at this time and the covenant is not there, then that is the bottom line, is the zoning is what will make that determination. And I think it was calculated by the agent for the applicant, and it's not an outrageous number by any stretch. However, in recognition that the process was a little bit unusual at the beginning, I think it warrants a thorough review before you give final adoption, so that the covenant is modified appropriately. But it is entirely council's discretion if you want to give both readings or not.
So, just a minute, Councillor Carlson. So for my own clarification, the original recommendation basically allowed for that kind of certainty with respect to moving ahead. Covenant stays in place, third reading is accomplished, and then once there's plans available, then we move to adoption because there's clarity around those things, right? But the motion we're considering right now essentially removes the covenant at the third, at this
The
point.
restriction to the number of lots.
Okay,
The rest of the covenant stays in place.
Okay,
but-
so it just removes the restrictions to number of lots. Okay, I needed that
Good
because
point.
essentially when it came to, talking about the 67 lots versus some other number, the only reason the 67 was there was because originally it was going to be a septic situation, and it's changed to sewer. So that number changes according to topography, lot sizes, whatever's allowed in lot size, et cetera, et cetera. So I actually am comfortable, I think, with the motion here in that the number changes or potentially could change, but the covenant stays in place.
Which is not the motion on the table right now.
The motion on the table is
It
that
is,
the numbers
that is.
change or could change. We're removing
Number's
the
gone.
67 limitation, but we're retaining the covenant in position, correct?
Well, the rest of the covenant.
The rest of the covenant is staying in position. Because the only reason that we, as I just stated, that we limited it to 67 was it wasn't sewer. We know the sewer's in place, or going to be in place. So I'm happy with the removal of the numbers, but I'm also happy with the, that the covenant, the other aspects of the covenants remain in place. Am I stating that
Right.
more
I think
correctly?
you just need to be, I think that to make the statement that the only reason it was limited to 67 might be stretching it. I think there was that was part of the overall reasoning,
Could be,
but so.
We were trying to avoid disruption of the site through septic servicing, et cetera.
Right.
So we went, that was the broad concept of why it was limited.
So again, so you're right, and then the only thing then limiting the maximum number would be your zoning bylaw, which would be the 1/3 lots. And
Yeah.
if you're comfortable with that, then you're okay to do third reading, direct staff to modify that covenant and bring that back at the next council meeting for adoption on removing the.
Councillor Cross?
Just say that I don't think I'm comfortable with that, and I think that I agree with Councillor Holmes that this process needs to be done, and council should retain a little bit more control over the next step in this process. I don't think that anyone is opposed to increasing the zoning of Hunter's Hills, and I think we need to see the information and understand what that is going to do for the resources, for the downstream, for everything in the neighborhood. And so I look forward to moving this forward, but following the process that's been outlined by the professionals who are doing their job to make sure that we do this properly.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Can we have it stated, please?
Yes. So other than the third reading, that staff be directed to amend restrictive covenants CA 48, blah, blah, the two covenants, to remove the 67 lot limit to permit increased density on the proposed development.
And bring back for council's consideration.
And to bring back to council's, thank you.
Okay. Everybody clear on what the motion is? Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
I have a quick question.
Councillor Traynor?
So with that motion, the only thing protecting the number of lots done is the zoning, correct? Can the zoning be changed at some point?
Well, only through a full rezoning application and process. So coming to council, having public hearing,
Okay.
et cetera. So.
Okay, that makes sense. And then we don't know a max, within this zoning, the 1/3, we don't know a max though for that property right now. Was it 300, was that the number?
I think if you did the math, and I think, what did I come up with, 320 or something? If it was assumed that the whole, however many hectares it was available for development, and there wasn't any of the environmental.
But given, if it was in the same footprint.
But you can't guarantee that.
Okay.
That's the part that's what the developer's telling you, but I don't believe that's part of the covenant at this point in time.
Okay, so that's really important then, so.
It is part of the
But
covenant.
that's what I'm asking.
And I apologize, but until I've had a chance to go through and really understand the
Yeah.
context, I brought
Right
forward
there.
the policy piece, but I have not studied the reasons why and what each of the terms in the covenant says, and that's why we need a little bit of time to address it and make sure there are no other red flags to raise.
Councillor Booth?
Which is precisely why I was asking what it meant to modify the covenants, what else is in the covenants. So you don't have an answer for that?
No, I do not.
It's on the title.
But if the
It's right
applicant
here.
hasn't put in an official community plan amendment, then I mean, that's all part of this process, right? With an application in front of her, then our planner can do her job and understand the whole process. I'm
Well,
assuming that.
She would have access to the covenants, though. They're on title, right?
Yeah, it's on title.
She has the
Covenants.
covenants. I think the point being that it's what comes first, an application, council's direction to move. Last council meeting, council said, yes, you would entertain this direction. The application, from what I understand, there was some hesitation not having an application. The covenant has been part of every report, so it's easy, accessible. And yes, if the covenant contains that, I do believe that if the covenant contains that restriction, then council, by looking at the motion that's on the table right now, would be sufficient. It's not going to be particularly risky.
Because actually, essentially, we're separating the covenant aspects, right?
Right.
We're removing the lot restriction, but the other aspects of the covenant have to be yet considered and would come through with adoption. The subdivision plan of adoption.
But it's basically saying that the new application that comes
Yes.
would have to conform
Yeah.
with that. So if that, I mean, we can pull the covenant up now.
I have a copy of the covenant, but there are a number of sections, and
But
without...
the section where it actually talks about the,
Says the parcels of land designated in the covenant are not to be subdivided except in accordance with the terms of the covenant, and then it's an 11-page document. So I guess that's
Section 2, park dedication.
my concern is that it addresses the grant of the covenant, the park dedication, the road improvements, the utilities, and mutual agreements, and in order to expedite the process to bring this forward, I did not do that detailed review. So it is entirely up to you. If you're comfortable with what the base zoning is, then that is your decision as council. As the subdivision approving officer, I will check all the technicalities, but this is the last opportunity for you to have say on the land use question. That's why these things are often tied together, is because council wants to see that. If you choose to forego that, there's nothing particularly wrong with that. It's just that it appears to me like something was done intentionally to begin with, and we were just asking you to stop and have a reasoned discussion about what the intention was previously, and are you continuing to be consistent with that intention. And if you are, because I was not here, I cannot say, but I want you to be aware of it. That's essentially.
Councillor Barco.
I'm sort of repeating myself here, but I think that the only thing that the motion on the table now does will not prolong the application, will not expedite the process at all. It only just prolongs the debate. I repeat that I would rather stay with the proposed motion by staff, and particularly since we don't even know all the details to the covenant.
Councillor Holmes.
Just, I agree. I believe the motion as recommended by staff would actually encourage the development to move further along. And I think we all want to see this development happen, and I would rather us, council, giving it a little push along.
I guess I have a question. I want to prolong this, but by moving ahead with the motion that Councillor Peak brought forward, essentially, by separating out the restriction to 67, does that allow for more to increase the ability to come up with the appropriate plan and the numbers of lots, et cetera, and move ahead? Because now that if we remove the number restriction, then the process of the applicant to look and examine the property further to see how many lots may be available, not just on the area, but on the topographical restrictions as well, then the balance of the restrictions that the covenant expresses will still remain in place to hold him to task with respect to the other aspects of park sensitive areas, et cetera, et cetera. And I have a long history with this project. I'm very familiar with the project. My biggest concern, now that it's been expressed that the footprint essentially stays the same, and I understand why we did that, and I understand the applicant's desire to have, and why council and previous councils looked at the environmentally sensitive area be set aside. And I understand why we went to a forced main was to allow for less disruption on the site, and also to allow to not have excessive water placed into the the area that was the green space, et cetera. So a lot of things have been accomplished with what we've done so far. So personally, I'm comfortable with the idea that we remove the restriction on lot number, but retain the ability to have the covenant on the balance of the concerns on the property. That's where I sit on it. And I have followed this development from day one. I know fully what's involved with why we did things at certain times. And, we put that restriction on numbers strictly based on the idea that that's all that site could handle, even in a pod or the way it's organized right now, for septic service. And council made the responsible decision at the time not to disrupt the site, lot by lot by lot, for septic disposal, and moved the way we did. And, we also went to the forced main idea strictly on the basis that it would allow no more than this development to be putting sewage into our particular plant, plus, of course, the industrial area which can add into it. And that's all it can do. So, I think I'm quite comfortable with removing the restriction and retaining the balance of the covenants until we understand, before we go to adoption. So we all had enough of a kick at that, including me? Okay, we're looking at the motion on the table. Councillor Boone.
Just one thing. I'm in agreement with Mr. Mayor. With the 67 lot restriction being put on because of the septic services, and then this consideration to lift that, it makes perfect sense to me. And I know that when we got the report that accompanied when this came forward again, I guess 2 meetings ago, there was a note in there from the APC stating that they agreed with the decision that had been made for Hunters Hill, and felt that they needed to have, I think one person did not accept it, but they felt that with this moving ahead and the allocation of the park land, the dedicated land, or conservation land, that the best use of that space in the development area with the cluster configuration was the way that they would like to see that developed. So that's the way I'd like to see it developed too. I think that I have enough faith in our subdivision approving officer to make the right decision in terms of accepting all of the application and all of the other documents that have to come forward. So that's all I need to say about that.
Great, thank you. Okay, anybody else? Councillor Holmes.
I just want to make one comment. To me, it's not really about this development. It's about the principle of, as the Director of Development Service was saying, it's about tying any rezoning to a subdivision, and not separating the two out. And to me, that's the important principle, that, it's not really to any specific development. That's just a principle that makes a lot of sense to me.
I think I argue with that on the specifics of this particular application based on why the covenants were put in place. Okay, anybody else? Okay, we have the motion in front of us. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving ahead. Moving on to councilor reports. Councilor Trainer, have I, your comment, Councilor Barkle?
No, I was just waiting.
I just wondered whether
Who were
I
you
had
pointing to
screwed up.
first?
No, I just wondered whether I'd screwed up on the process yet again. Councilor Trainer.
I have nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Councilor Barkle.
I just wanted to comment on, we hosted a Japanese exchange student this week. First time my wife and I had done anything like that, and it was a worthwhile experience. And I think that the students all had a good time. We had the only boy in our household, and we tried to introduce him to farm life. I'm not so sure how keen he was about that, but...
Afterwards.
Anyway, we wore him out. We certainly entertained him.
Okay, further, since you're speaking, I wanted to express something right now. I think I'd like to express my condolences to you and your family. You've been through a very tragic set of circumstances in the loss of your brother, whom I knew very well over the years. And also, tragically, you lost your sister shortly thereafter. So I don't know how any one family can weather that much in a short period of time. And my condolences, and I'm sure the rest of council go out to you. Very sorry for your loss.
Thank you, Peter.
Councillor Booth.
Nothing to report.
Councillor Carlson.
Also related to Toyokoro, the adults of the delegation came to our cherry packing house and orchard the other day, and so I was able to give them a tour, and we tasted cherry juice and cherries and saw the whole thing from tree to box. So I think it was a lot of fun, and I think it was well received. So that was my family's contribution.
Cool. Councillor Holmes. Nothing. Councillor Booth. I'm Councillor Peak. How did I do that?
That's quite all right. I'd like to reinforce the mayor's statements around the organization and the committee and the work they did to make this delegation and visit a very effective one. There was a lot of joy in what went on, and the newer families that took on students said they are interested in doing that again. We acquired a couple more families, somebody else that wants to go on the committee. There was a number of statements around the impact of that cultural exchange and what that does for the students in our area, because there were many people that came out to the barbecue and the Sayonara dinner as well. And I'd like to congratulate the committee on the work that they did towards that.
Thank you. Okay, is there anything, actually, we have opportunity for the public to bring anything forward?
Opportunity for the public. Patrick Murphy, I want to genuinely and sincerely thank council for the discussion and effort they put in tonight. Sitting back here, I was getting confused as to what was actually taking place, and I also congratulate staff for doing their best to try to keep it clear for council. Respectfully, I would like to ask what the motion was that got voted on, if that's okay, please? Is that reasonable? I'm just not clear.
First one being that the bylaw be read a third time. And the second point being that staff be directed to draft an amendment to the restrictive covenants, those two, to remove the 67 lot limit to permit increased density on the proposed development and to bring this back for council's consideration.
Is that, thank you, is that like holding the 67 lot restriction at third reading? Is that the essence of that? The removal of that lot at third reading? That restriction at
No,
third?
that would be brought back for adoption.
It means that when we've got the legal papers, we'll bring it back next council meeting, and then when they agree that the paperwork's in order, they'll do fourth reading and release it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it, and I appreciate the concerns that were expressed. And I will mention that every other covenant that is on our title will in fact be remaining on title. And so I think honestly, every concern that was expressed here tonight is covered in the covenants that will be remaining on title, including the parkland dedication. So,
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the public would like to speak? Anybody from the press?
Yes, I have a question about the brewery. And that is, I believe that Mr. Lauer said that when I went for the Advanced Planning Commission, that they had recommended that the term distillery be removed. And yet, in Revenue Development Services report, it just says that they passed a resolution supporting the application, which is true. Am I confused, or what is the status? Did they approve it simply as stated with brewery distillery, or did they ask the distillery part be removed?
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, but the minutes of the APC that I reviewed did not specify that change. To the best of my recollection, yes, it's been a couple of weeks since I prepared the report, but I don't have any recollection of any of that discussion, and of course, I was not present for it. So it would require, if we wanted to take the word distillery away, would require a text amendment to that definition within the zoning bylaw itself, and we'd have to proceed on that basis.
It might have been that there is just a general suggestion made that have they considered this, and it was fine with them, but we'll follow that up as well, just out of
Certainly,
interest, but,
yeah.
Sounds like the applicant has reasons for not wanting the distillery aspect of it.
I believe from a practical operational perspective, certainly bylaw as it reads now, the description, it doesn't oblige him to have a distillery, so if he chooses not to, that's no problem.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? John? Okay. Okay, can I have a motion for adjournment, please? Counselor Boot, Counselor Peak, all in favor? Notice how I kept you, was able to figure out who was who?